Hey y'all, I'm back and I have more creepy stories for you guys. This says scary stories / ghost stories from your hospital or work. I'm an EMT and eat this stuff up. I'm not necessarily religious, on the fence about it, but I've experienced some stuff I cannot explain. I can recall one fairly well. I was in the basement of the hospital grabbing a new gurney as ours was ripped apart from a violent patient. It was 3 a.m., PICU was on the 3rd floor and it was locked down for the night, so no visitors in the hospital. The basement storage unit was packed with stuff, so when I felt my shirt get pulled on, I assumed it got caught on an object. Then it happened again. Only this time, I heard a little girl's voice, crystal clear, say, "I'm lost." My heart was pounding, I felt all the hairs on my body stand up, and I called my partner down to help me with the gurney. I've talked to nurses, CNAs, and even some physicians who have had weird experiences, especially in the ICU and hospice side. So this is like a thread. That was just the original post, but this is a thread of scary hospital / work stories, like paranormal stories, I don't know, and I'm scared. I've worked in healthcare for over 20 years now, and I have a couple from working in nursing homes of seeing the figure in black shooting across the hall, and then in the next 24 hours, a resident will die, and in less than a week, another one will pass as well. But my favorite story is this. I worked at a very small hospital, maybe 30 beds. It's been around for many years. In the basement is, of course, the old morgue, and there is one elevator that goes from the basement to the main floor outside of the nurses' station. This elevator would come up in the middle of the night randomly, and the doors would open, and all the staff would get up and go find the patient who just passed away in the elevator, or like they would just find them in their room. I don't know what that means. One night, my coworkers and I were sitting at the nurses' station, and down the short hall to our right, we hear this TV come on, and the volume is up as loud as it can go. One of my coworkers and I walked down the hall to find the TV to turn it down. There's one room down the hall that maintenance has the door closed and do not enter signs on the door. After looking in all the open rooms, there was no other room but the closed one to look in. We opened the door. There was nothing in this room except the TV. I walked in, turned the TV off, and said, "Stop that. There's a sick baby next door who needs to sleep, so please be quiet." I walked out and closed the door with no further incidents with the TV. I'm still stuck on, like, did you find the dead body in the elevator, or the elevator would come up and then you would find a dead body? Because what the fuck does the elevator have to do with anything? One of my old floors I worked on, we always had weird occurrences happen at night. It was a neuro step-down unit. This unit had glass walls so you could chart and monitor your patient. We had a patient who had a severe stroke and was nonverbal. Feeding tube, restrained, total care, etc. They rarely had family visit too. In the middle of the night, their call light went off. When I answered it, a woman said, "He is really hurting, he needs his pain medication." So I walk into the room to check on him. The room is empty. The room is dark, nobody's in there, and the patient is sleeping. I tell his nurse what happened, and I go back and sit down at the CN desk. The call light goes off again. It's his room. Same voice, "Please, he is really hurting." I get up and walk back to the room, same story. I tell his nurse and she gives him pain medicine through his peg and we repositioned him in bed. The call light doesn't go off again. It was really eerie. Strange things happened on that floor. That's horrific. Is he like communicating with ghosts and he's like, "Tell them to give me my meds," because he can't communicate with you? That's like really sad. Really sad. One night in an old psychiatric hospital, as in built in the 1800s, a tech and I were the only ones up. Every patient seemed to be asleep. We checked every 15 minutes. Anyways, I was sitting outside the office door and she was sitting at the back of the very small office eating her soup. The other office door to our side suddenly opened and closed, and then the small restroom door in our office closed. Neither of us said anything for about a full minute. Then I asked her if that had just happened. She sighed with relief and said yes, it had, and that she was glad she wasn't losing her mind. I guess the ghost needed to use the restroom in a hurry. Maybe it was a former nurse or tech who had worked there. That's insane, because what do you mean? I don't know ghosts who go to the bathroom. During residency, doing a rotation at a local pediatric hospital, had a 4-week-old patient with a terminal congenital condition the parents could not accept and would not make DNR. It was only because they kept insisting she be resuscitated that she was even alive. We had finally convinced mom and dad to go to the Ronald McDonald House for some Z's and had gone to check her CXR because of her bilateral chest tubes from the last resuscitation when the entire team loaded into the elevator. This is a lot of big words and I'm scared for where this is going. The doors closed and our beepers all went off at once, announcing a code to her room. Just then, the elevator stopped dead, and we all just looked at each other like we knew. Now, this was before nurses ever did codes. Back then, the nurses didn't even start the IVs except in the NICU. It seemed like hours, but it was only minutes before the elevator went back up and the doors opened. We piled out and ran out and up the steps. The nurses had started her code and no other docs had made it to the room yet, but she was gone. To this day, I still don't quite know what happened, but we all thought the same thing at the same time, is all I can say. It's so sad, but it's also so sad to like keep this child alive when like they just, I don't know. But that's also such an impossible decision to make, like to DNR your baby. I used to work on a floor back in the day, had a patient who was being discharged the next morning, only on PRN pain meds and hadn't had anything mind altering that day. I go in his room at 3 a.m. and ask him why he can't sleep. He says, I'm not hurting or anything, and don't get me wrong, I love kids, but why are you guys letting children run around the unit so late? I asked what he was talking about, and he said, the kids in the dinosaur and cowboy costumes. I said I hadn't seen them, but I'll let the other staff know to send these kids back to their parents, thinking to myself, who the hell let them in here this late in the first place? I head back to the nurse's station and tell the charge, who has worked there for years. I tell him, hey, the dude in room XY said he can't sleep because some kids keep coming into his room. He looks at me and says, less alarmed than you would expect. Oh, the kids in the dinosaur and cowboy costumes? I asked a couple other more veteran staff and they all had stories of patients telling them the same thing. If they were all messing with me, then half the unit and my patient were phenomenal liars. That's insane. But wait, oh my God, stop, because they probably died there and they probably had costumes, like fun little costumes. These are really sad. I have 3. The first is our unit was moved to the old pediatric floor for a renovation. It was like 3 a.m. and the call bell goes off. This PT is furious because the PT next door has been banging on the walls. We could hear the banging, we apologize, tell them we'll go talk to them, walk into the room next door, the banging stops, and I think PT means patient. The patient is sound asleep. Second story, I had a patient for a couple of months. I do INPT oncology, so our patients get very sick very fast. He was on comfort care and passed alone. Take him to the morgue, they clean the room, new patient gets in there. Poor lady calls in the middle of the night that there's a strange man sitting in her room. We go in and she's like, I swear he was just here. She describes him, yep, exactly like the former patient. Last one, again, another patient we took care of for a few months. Very sad situation. The room is right next to the nurse's station. He had been a very confused active PT in a low bed, so constantly setting off alarms. He passes, the room gets cleaned and placed on hold for a new admit. His call bell went off all night long. Finally, one of the nurses went in and yelled at him that it was time to quiet down and let us get work done. The call bell didn't go off again. That's insane. It's so scary. I worked in an old building psych hospital. Parts of it were over 100 years old and had multiple buildings on the property. Some were in use, some were not. Then there was Unit 12B. 12B was abandoned and parts were flooded. On night shift between 0200 and 0300, I think that means 2 to 3 a.m., you would get calls from 12B. You were told on your first night to never answer the extension. I think it was 2307, but I can't remember. One night, a new nurse answered, and that triggered a cascade of calls to the unit until shift change. They're like, and if you answer, oh, I'm gonna give you hell. But why? I would feel like you would give me hell if I don't answer. What's the point? At my old hospital, we had Susie. We never were a unit working with children, but everyone who encountered her claimed her to be about 8 years old. We usually only saw a shadowy figure or heard her running over the unit's floor at night. Sometimes she messed with the lights, call lights, computer, or our old paper charts. She didn't seem malevolent, and a stern, "Not now, Susie, I'm busy," usually kept her in line. She did not like swearing, though. One of our newer doctors once made the mistake to tell her to fuck off. After that, bad luck seemed to follow him whenever he stepped on the unit. Misplacing his coffee mug, just to show up later exactly where he had put it down, but now ice cold. Charts disappearing, lights turning off in the middle of him placing an IV, which prompted me to call her out and told her to turn the lights back on. His chair going down to the lowest setting every time he sat down, even if we switched chairs. The chair would work perfectly fine for anyone but him. We had him apologize to her and it all stopped. Or at least he wasn't that specifically targeted anymore. I kind of miss her. She seems fun, honestly, and she's like, and don't talk to me like that. As she should. Used to work in a rehab hospital that's been around since the US outbreak of polio, 1910. The building my unit was on was one of the original buildings. Our unit was constantly experiencing maintenance problems, pipes bursting within the walls, electrical wiring shortages, air conditioning breaking, etc. We all contributed it to the hospital just repeatedly using Band-Aid solutions to cut costs. But then we had this room on the floor. While the rest of the unit would be uncontrollably hot from the broken AC, this room would be chilly. Randomly, the toilet in the room would flush. It wasn't sensor activated, just a handle, as well as the automatic paper towel dispenser. The scariest of all, though, was when a patient complained about a woman coming into his room at night while he was sleeping. and just standing there at the foot of his bed before leaving. He legitimately asked to speak to a manager the next day to complain about this unknown staff member interrupting his sleep. He said he couldn't describe what she looked like because it was too dark. Only that she had long hair that she wore down, and it still creeps me out to this day, and I don't even work there anymore. Who is she? And what is she doing? Why are they flushing toilets? Are ghosts going to the bathroom? I'm so confused because that's the second story about a ghost being in a bathroom. Haunting the bathroom for what? My first job out of LPN school was nights in a hospital-based SNF. Like, what does any of this mean? After my first rounds, I'd parked the med cart about halfway down the hall so I could just start 0600, synthroids, and finger sticks on my last rounds. Like, I don't know what this means. One night, the cart moved itself to the end of the hallway. My aides saw this and declared someone was going to die tonight because the ghosts know. They were discussing likely candidates. I was assessing extra hard, but everyone was fine. At their baseline is what I mean. I just thought my aides were giving me a leg pull. Sure enough, last rounds came and they found the body. When I talked to the day nurse who had been there for like 30 years, she said it only happened on nights and she was totally nonchalant about it. I worked there for 2 years and every goddamn time someone died unexpectedly, the cart had moved down the hallway. Interestingly, it didn't move when we were aware and treating someone circling the drain, just the unexpected ones. I was creeped out and grateful for the heads up at the same time. Like, that's like what is that? Is there a cat? There's like a cat that knows. Or is that from House? I think that's from a TV show. But there was like a cat in House that knew when people were going to die and it would go into the room and it would hang out with them. It was just like a hospital cat. I think that's a thing though. I think that's like a common thing. I don't know. Common thing, like every hospital has a hospital cat that knows when you're gonna die. Yeah. No. I just feel like I've seen it in more than one place. That's all I'm saying. I work in a trauma/burn ICU. When I was on nights, we had a patient go ballistic, screaming about the dark men were trying to get her, etc. Weird, as she was previously oriented, but maybe she was having a bad dream. Drop dead during the day shift. I used to work ED in a small rural hospital, and when transporting a patient up to the floor, the room right across from the elevator had a little old man trying to figure out his TV button. Make a note to ask the nurses up there to help, and when I bring it up, they say the patient in the room is female and on comfort care. She's a ward of the state and doesn't have any visitors. Charge takes a walk with me down the hall, and sure as shit, there are no visitors in the room. And then last one, and this one. When a curtain RT, attending, and I work, we are the deathly trio. At least one person codes, usually in room 27 or 43. So we're working, a patient starts to circle in 27, when from the middle of the unit, another nurse is yelling for help. She walked into her patient's room to find her with her subclavian line out, I don't know what that means, painting on the walls in blood to protect everyone from the shadow men. When my CW tried talking her down, the patient saw one of the shadow people in the halls and lost her mind. A few minutes later, we start coding the patient at 27 and we're unable to get them back. What the fuck? So she just cut herself, it put blood on the walls because of the shadow people? I'm so confused. Was that related to the first one? Are they the same shadow people? I don't like this. I used to do post-mortem care as part of my tech job, and there would be times when me and a coworker would take the person down on the cart, and once we got to the basement corridor where the morgue was, we would both get the feeling that somebody was following us. This happened multiple times with multiple different coworkers. I was never sure if it was the same someone following us each time, or maybe just whoever we had in the cart. But it happened enough times with enough witnesses that it was hard to not feel like something was going on. Well, you're working in a morgue. It's gonna be haunted. Okay, this is the last one I'm gonna read. When I was working night shift at a previous job, one of the day shift nurses came in after she went into cardiac arrest and got into an MVC while en route to work. Her name was Ophi. She survived a few days, but eventually passed away in the ICU. Months later, I was taking care of an elderly woman who was clearly sundowning. I did my best to calm her, but with little luck. Out of nowhere, she yells, "Ophi, Ophi." Nobody in her family was named Ophi, and we were not talking about Ophi that night either. She was like, what? She was like still doing her job. She was like still a nurse, and she was taking care of the elderly woman. I know I said that was the last one, but I just saw this and I have to read this. I'm a night shift nurse, and I got to stay in the hospital during the day because of pretty bad icy roads and snow. I was awoken to someone slapping me in the face. I even heard the slap sound. I just packed my shit up and left the room. And I would leave the hospital forever. I don't care. I will take my chances with the snow. All right, well, that's all I'm gonna read for now. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys have any weird hospital stories, I guess, that you wanna share with me in the community, I will have my subreddit link down below. I know I haven't rambled in a while. It's because I'm filming all these videos from like the last couple weeks in the same week. You guys, I have nothing to say. I've done nothing but film and edit. So I'm sorry, but there's not gonna be any rambling. But I love you so much. I will see you in the next one. Hopefully I'll have stuff to ramble about next time I film because the weekend will have gone by. Maybe. I don't know. I love you. Bye.